The first round of the GMT Classical Tournament has been finished, and we had quite an amazing day because 3 decisive games out of 4 with black color is a huge result for a classical tournament. So let's have a look at what happened in the very exciting and action-packed round 1. So we are going to start with a game of Nodirbek Abdusattorov, the reigning world rapid champion, against Domarayu Gukesh. So here they played it out. Really interesting and topical line of the Sicilians. Sveshnikov, which has been in the circuit basically pretty much since 2018, World Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. So here after knight c3, e5, knight b5, d6, the so-called old theory, of course, is bishop g5, but knight e5 has been the hot topic ever since the match. After knight e5 takes, knight b8, white's idea is to create some sort of a pawn majority at the queen side, and black, in the meantime, tries to checkmate white at the king side. So here, a4, bishop e2, all of these moves made quite a lot of sense according to the plan. White wants to play a5 before he can retreat with the knight on c4. However, after a couple of moves, here something went wrong for the Uzbeki grandmaster. He pretty much mixed up a couple of plans. He played c4, knight e7, and now he decided to fight for the e4 square by trading the light square bishops and position the knight on e4. However, even with the first glance on the position, you could feel that something has gone slightly off for white, because you look at the position, his entire queen side is underdeveloped. So here Gukesh was very fast with his action. He played bishop f6, the light square bishops were traded, but white didn't really get the chance to occupy the e4 square with the knight. After e4, the rook has to go away, bishop e5, very powerful idea, knight e2, knight f6, queen e2, and now instead of protecting the pawn on e4, here Gukesh sacrificed 2 pawns in a row. He played f3, g takes, and knight h5, clearly hinting at some sort of a big attack at the king side. Think about moves like knight f4, queen g5, queen h4, checkmate on h2, and the white king is now under a direct attack. Abdusattorov was precise with his defense. After knight g3, rook e8, black included all of his pieces in the attack, and the critical first moment arose here. Now, Gukesh already could have forced the draw. After knight takes on g3, h takes, bishop takes on g3, this game most likely would have finished in perpetual check. So this was one of the lines we discussed in the live stream studio, so white has nothing better than to repeat the position, and so does black. However, Gukesh probably felt a little bit more ambitious, and here he played bishop f4, insisting to continue the game, despite the fact that he was down 2 pawns. White made a couple of more precise moves, but you could feel that he was under a pressure the whole time. After g5, rook e4, takes, knight f6. Now finally black started to get to the pawn on h2, so naturally white tried to escape. King f1, another precise move from black, bishop g3, take it, queen e4, threatening with queen h1, threatening with knight g4, knight e5. Abdusattorov remained to be precise, knight g4, queen d3 the only move, queen e5, and now after leading a very unpleasant defense for most of the part of the game, here the Uzbeki grandmaster made a mistake. What he should have done, he should have played bishop d2, which is a pretty difficult defense to find and doesn't really matter what black is doing here. For example, rook takes on h2. White somehow keeps the balance. I mean, this was really difficult defense to find. Here in the studio also was Vishy Anand, the former world champion. He didn't see this move. He also felt that queen d4, queen f5, queen d3 could be the way to continue the game. However, after a couple of repetition of the moves, here Gukesh was able to find a very powerful sequence. He took on e3, queen b1 check. Now here the king is forced to defend the pawn on h2, and after this very unpleasant check, queen c2, now naturally white cannot play queen f2 due to the rook takes on h2 check. King f1, now due to the perpetual check threat, black here played rook f6, eliminating perpetual check, and already it was quite apparent that white is suffering. Now, Anand here was suggesting to play h6, which felt pretty natural. Queen takes on h2 also is a move. Queen g2 probably also is a move. But here Gukesh found something else. He played queen b1 check, king d2, and king f8, pretty much eliminating white's chances to deliver a perpetual check. Now, Nodorbeck, of course, tried to find some resources. However, to defend against two heavy pieces, hunting the black king was too much for white. So the game finished pretty quick that in the end, white already is forced to give up the queen. For example, king b3, you could play here either rook d2 or rook e1, and in the end, white will have to give up the queen, which essentially should mean the end of the game. Now, the game number 2 was also another decisive result, which was Le Quang Liem against Gata Kamsky, and it started with a really interesting Queen's Gambit accepted. Kamsky very quickly tried to sacrifice back the extra pawn, so the game reached a highly interesting and theoretical variation. Black kept the pawn, however, white was slightly better developed and had a pawn majority at the king side. So after some of the moves were made, you could feel that definitely white is enjoying some sort of a compensation, but black never really felt like he was in the danger. After bishop e6, knight e4, take, here, Kamsky made an excellent decision. Now, he would love to play a5 to bring the rook in the game, but that would allow to respond white with b5. So that's why he played b5. Very committal choice. And after queen b3, a5 now was possible. Now, white has to take on a5, otherwise the pawn on b4 is going to become a weakness. So after a couple of moves here, rook a5, knight c5, rook a8, white played e6, f6, and now we couldn't properly evaluate this position because it felt that definitely white has a very good compensation. Probably Le Quang Liem felt the same. However, he failed to come up with a probably decent continuation how he can prove where exactly lies his compensation. He played queen d1, which probably was a good move because he's threatening to win back the pawn on d4. However, Kamsky found a brilliant resource. He played d3, offering the queen trade because the white pawn on a2 also is under attack. So Le Quang Liem decided to decline. He took with the knight. And now, suddenly, all of black's pieces jump to action very fast. So knight e1 already seems to be necessary. Queen f5, already here it became quite apparent that black is simply better. Couple of moves continued, h5, h4. Here, Vishy Anand, after the game, was suggesting why white did not play rook c5, which indeed felt to be the strongest move in the position. But here, the Vietnamese grandmaster made a major mistake. He played rook e4, targeting the pawn on h4, not only not blundering rook takes on a2. Because queen a2, queen e4, white gave up a pawn for nothing. So here he had to play queen g4, and now white had to endure a long defensive game. Rook a4, Kamsky tried to simplify the matters. And in the end, we reached a position which the former world champion Vishy Anand would say that probably white has more drawing chances than black can win the game. After a couple of moves, the critical moment arose here. f4, naturally, white tried to trade a couple of pawns, black activated the pieces, and after knight f3, king f6, the critical mistake, rook c4 by Le Quang Liem. What he should have done is either rook a5 or rook a6, keep the rook active, and try to press the pawn on c7 and maybe trade pair of knights and make the pawn on g5 as a target. Rook c4 seemed to be an active move. However, after rook a8, suddenly black had chances to bother the pawn on g2, which suddenly is quite difficult to defend. So, after rook c2, rook a4, white now had another problem. The pawn on g4 is very weak. After a couple of moves, black was very precise. He conquered the second pawn, and in the end, the position already was technical, and Kamsky was able to convert the game quite convincingly with a very nice trick in the end, rook a1. So white cannot really take on h2 because rook a2 check wins the game. Otherwise, black just promotes to the queen. Really, really impressive game for Kamsky, who had a very disappointing rapid tournament, finishing only half a point out of 7. The third decisive result, and again with a black color, was Arkady Naidich's amazing game against Salem Saleh. So they played out a Ray Lopez, which appeared to be quite peaceful from the start. So all of this has been played thousands of times before. However, 97 is a bit rare move. So here, according to Naidich, who said in the postgame interview, of course, d4 is the main move here. He felt that d3 perhaps is not the most ambitious move. However, it should be perfectly playable. After knight b6, bishop e3, both sides developed their pieces. White was clearly hinting at some point to play d4. That's why Naidich's knight on b6 and on a5 felt like perfectly placed for some action to land the piece on c4. After knight c6, knight g3, rook e8, there was a lot of maneuvering. Both players finished development. So the first critical moment arose here. Perhaps d4 was a bit too early. What here Salem Saleh could have done, he could have postponed the decision to play bishop b1. However, he also needs to watch out for black to play d5. So after d4, bishop c4 was a very interesting move. Also, Vishy Anand in the studio was wondering why didn't play queen d2. However, after queen d2, bishop takes on a2 could be at some point causing white some issues because b3, c4, the bishop on a2 is not really trapped. Either way, the game would be really complex. So here, after bishop d3, take it, rook d3, here Naidich felt that he can take over the game. He took on d4, e takes on d4, c4, and knight b4, not only establishing a potential weakness, a potential target on a2, but clearly hinting at knight d3. So either way, white here should have done something else, like perhaps b3 immediately, or try to land the piece on d4, like d5, knight e4, or some could try to combine these ideas. But something started to go wrong for Salem. Here he started to make not perhaps the most precise moves, knight h2, rook f1, b3, and f3. So clearly here we look at black's last move, h5, black is threatened, play h4. The pawn on e4 is under attack. So after f3, queen h4, suddenly this knight has nowhere really to go unless you want to play knight h1. So here Salem tried to complicate the matters. He took on d3 and played queen d2, clearly hinting that after queen takes on g3, he can play bishop f2, and the black queen is trapped. Of course, black didn't fall to it. He played d5. And actually, in the postgame interview, Naidich was not very happy. He said perhaps rook c8 was stronger, threatening directly with rook c2, because here after d5, bishop f2, queen e7, e5, the game already was not so clear. And he was right. So here after rook c8, queen d3, queen c7, now black is threatened to trade queens. So after queen d2, knight e7, here probably white slightly overpressed. There was already about the time trouble for both players. Maybe white should have tried to push f4, f5, but with the queen on e3. Here white decided to go all in and sacrifice another piece to expose the black king. After g takes, queen g5, bishop g7, what it appeared to be a dangerous-looking attack. However, black was very precise. Queen c6, queen g6, queen e4, rook c6, and already you could see that white's attack is not happening and black simply has an extra rook. A couple of moves later, Naidich decided to simplify matters. He gave up the rook but offered a queen trade. Bishop h6 would allow trading queens. Bishop takes on h6, black would have just an extra piece. So understandably, white tried to complicate matters and tried to get at least some practical chances. However, he never was given a chance because black remained very precise, found a way to simplify the position. White continued, seek some chances, but in the end, white simply ran out of pieces. So in the end, yeah, White had to resign. So really, really impressive game by Nidich. And the final game of Vincent Keimer against Andrei Yesipenko, it was rather peaceful, which started as already. It switched to the Catalan, Queen c4, Bishop g5. This is, again, a very topical line. Here, Vincent decided to try for the game b4. Very interesting idea to push b5, question Black's low square bishop's placement. Yesipenko played bishop d5, take it, queen b3, c6, and e3. Essentially reaching a cast path position where White is aiming for b5, establishing a weakness on c6, while Black should do something at the king side. After a couple of moves, White was trying to understand which is the right moment to push b5. Yesipenko was at the same time trying to meet b5 perhaps with c takes, a takes, a5. The game was really tense, really interesting. h5, h4 perhaps was not the best decision for White because suddenly after knight e4, White needed to watch out for some sacrifices on f2 or g3. Also, g5 might be a potential idea. So here after b5, take, rook a3 was a very interesting resource by the Russian grandmaster. And after queen b2, we're already wondering perhaps some sacrifices like knight takes on f2 are already working. In the post-game interview, both players confessed they were not really sure. Of course, they saw this idea, but Yesipenko, of course, said that a piece is a piece. He wasn't sure about this continuation, and that's why he just took the pawn on b5, the idea that queen b5 is met by a fork. After knight e5, Black could have kept perhaps slightly better chances here, having he played knight f6 with the idea to play b4. However, after a couple of moves, the position simplified, and in the end, we got the following endgame. So White won back the pawn on a3. Black has a weakness on c6, but since this is a rook endgame, Black eventually managed to equalize the game. So the final moment arose here, final trick. So White is threatened with rook e7 because f5 is impossible, and king f6 allows to play rook a6. So Yesipenko decided to sacrifice the pawn on the spot. So c5, rook c4, and king f6, claiming that the white king cannot join the action because at any given moment, king f1, Black plays rook c2, and the king can never come to help the passed pawn. So here, White decided to sacrifice a pawn to get some practical chances to activate the king. However, Black was pretty precise, and after a couple of moves, the draw was agreed. So in the end, what's the results of the first round of a classical tournament? You see, it's actually quite surprising. 3 wins for the black color. Gukesh beat Abdusatorov and is about 1 point shy of reaching 2700 level ELO club, being only 16 years old. Major result for the Indian grandmaster. Kamsky managed to come back after a very disappointing rapid tournament, scoring a victory with Black against Likwang. Yesipenko Keimer was a good draw, and Nidich played the perfect game against Salem Saleh. So here you see the rankings of the classical tournament. Of course, Gukesh, Kamsky, Nidich, they lead the classical tournament. But what is really important is the overall rankings, because Yesipenko has taken the lead in the overall rankings. Once again, to remind you, it's 3 tournaments, 3 different scoring systems for the classical, rapid and blitz. Yesipenko leads with 11.5 points, and is trailed by Gukesh and Likwang half a point behind. The action will continue with round 2 of the classical tournament. There also is going to be a blitz tournament. Action in Biel is only heating up. Hope you like it, and don't forget to come back for the live stream schedule, for the live stream of round 2, which every day starts at 2 p.m. Stay tuned.